My name is Michael Gallup. I'm the Commercial Director. I'll introduce myself in just a moment. And today we're going to be covering off communication and collaboration within firms and how they're using custom mobile and web solutions in order to do that. It's all about keeping your employees connected with the goals of your organisation. So without further ado, let's crack on. As I mentioned, I'm Mike Gallup. Got a stunning picture of me there. But that's enough of that. Let's talk about the agenda. So first of all, we're going to talk about the main challenges that firms are facing. And obviously these have been escalated by COVID, and we've had to come up with new and ingenious ways to ensure that everyone stays engaged and connected. We're going to look at some of the trends that we're seeing in the market. This isn't just about legal trends, this is just more general. And we're going to look at the different digital solutions that are out there and how we can best foster them. The most important thing, and I think why most people join, is they want to see what other firms are doing. So I've got 4 case studies that I'm going to be sharing with you to give you some examples of different tools that people have used in different ways. This isn't just about, an internal comms solution. This is about just communication and collaboration in general. Very briefly, it's just 2 slides to give those of you who either aren't customers or aren't aware of what Fliplet do, a quick overview of who we are. And then I'm going to open it up to questions. So quick reminders, if you can stay on mute. I think there's someone, I'm going to mute. There we go.
Entra na imagem.
Okay. Yeah, if you could stay on mute, it just helps. Obviously, we will bring you in later on if you want to ask questions. If not, then you can use the chat feature. So the chat feature, we have the lovely Sophie. Give us a wave, Sophie. Hello. She's going to be there supporting. So if you've got questions, please feel free to either type them in so that everyone can read them, or send Sophie a personal message if you'd like to remain anonymous to the other people on this webinar. We also have a QR code. Now, everyone loves a QR code. They're used extensively, and we've started using them for our webinars now. So here's the QR code. If you have a phone, don't worry now, but please have it to hand, because a bit later on, I'm going to show this QR code again. I'd like you to scan it. There's only a few questions that come up, but it's really important to get your feedback and tell us what you want to hear and learn from us in the future. So let's kick off. So why is communication so important? To start off with, 70% of employees say they're not very engaged with their work, and that lack of engagement affects motivation, productivity levels, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Ultimately, one of the main reasons that result from poor internal communications. We've also got 44% of employees say that poor communication leads to delays in projects or work that they're completing. 18% of employees have lost a sale, and that's not just in the legal network, but not being able to have the information they need at that critical time and coming back in a timely fashion has affected the loss of business. And 55% say that they spend more time doing work than they should do because they haven't been able to access the correct information. So for employees to really feel that their work is valuable, they really need to know that they're contributing towards and helping to shape the future of your organization. It comes down to a much more emotional investment, that we actually know that we're part of something bigger and we're committed to making that happen. So the senior leaders and the internal communications team, they have to remember to communicate what employees want to know, not what they think they need to know. And that's really important. So also giving the employees a voice, championing them, encouraging them. It shouldn't just be a one-way communication tool. It should very much be about engagement, getting that feedback from the people within the organization. So what's the impact of this? Well, it impacts everything. It's day-to-day operations, key messaging to ensure that people know that the part they're playing in supporting the business and its strategic direction. Working across different departments. Again, there's lots of silos. As organizations get bigger, you end up with silos. So keeping everyone informed of what different departments are doing and when is very important. Strategic alignment, as we've mentioned, it's what is it that we're focusing on? What is it by quarter, by week, by month, by year? What is it that the company is doing, and ensuring that every communication is led and focused on a particular topic. Leadership, a tone of voice. As we all try to compete to get the best people to join our organization, we work really hard, but how do we keep them? How do we recognize them? How do we set a culture of recognition and success and engaging with our employees to get feedback and make sure that they feel valued? And that leads on to the motivation and productivity, ensuring that these people aren't frustrated because they're not quite sure what's going on and where they fit into it, and it can kill motivation. Customer service, sometimes just if you're a big organization with lots of clients, it's not always easy to know who your clients are. So even just being able to have somewhere where they can access and see the latest news about new clients that have come on board can really help. Sharing ideas, as we said earlier, giving your staff a voice, simplifying processes, using that technology so employees can spend time doing their job instead of performing manual repetitive tasks. The employee experience, very important nowadays. We've grown up and we've got, is it Generation X? We've got millennials, they're all digital natives. What is their experience of suddenly coming from a consumer world where everything is, in the palm of their hand? They have instant gratification is what they're looking for. They have zero tolerance for waiting times, loading times, anything like that. And then suddenly they join a law firm and are handed maybe a 200-page ring binder and expected to read it. They just don't really engage with it. So what is their experience? And also, what is the engagement? How are we collating feedback? How do our employees handle stress and adversity? So regular, not just an annual appraisal, but regular feedback, understanding where the business is going and encouraging them to give feedback in terms of how to improve the business going forward, which again leads to that employee retention. Good communication is proven to increase retention and loyalty. So some of the biggest challenges that we have is not just that communication, but sharing information to ensure that people can get their job done. 60% of organizations don't currently have a long-term strategy for internal comms. Some are just using the same outdated processes that they were using back in the early 2000s even. 91% of employees said that their leaders lack communication skills and that they don't have a full understanding of the company's strategy. Now that is pretty shocking. You would like to think that everyone in that organization is aware of the company's strategy, what they're trying to achieve. But these challenges mean that an outdated strategy, a lot of firms rely on just sending emails. Now, if you would like to receive more emails, please speak now. If you get too many emails, then I think you're with me. So in addition to phone calls, text messages, group chats, social networks, internal meetings, on top of all of that, the average person gets around 120 emails every single day. What does this mean? It means that information gets lost, passed over. If you're in the middle of a project, an email comes in, you can see that it's internal, you know it's not urgent, it gets lost, it never actually gets read. That can cause problems. The generational divide, as I mentioned, the millennials and Gen Z, they lean towards instant messaging, text messages and WhatsApp. That's the way that they communicate and receive information, whereas baby boomers may prefer phone calls, emails, or in-person conversations. So it's understanding this multi-generational workforce and how do we appeal to everyone. A lack of information, this causes a lot of confusion with employees and therefore has a knock-on effect on the work that they're doing. The tracking of the success metrics of who's actually engaging with this. Are we spending a lot of time, money, resource, and effort to put communications out there and people just simply aren't reading them or acting upon them? We've got failing to include remote workers. More and more people are now focused very highly on people working either remotely or hybrid, sometimes in the office, sometimes not. How do we ensure that they feel as included within the culture of the firm as everyone else? I think we would all agree, anyone that works in a communications role, budget limitations, it's a cost center. it's not going to generate additional return on investment. Actually, it does. It's just sometimes hard to convince the powers that be. So we need to focus on ensuring we can measure and track that this is actually working and adding value. A lot of times it's one way. We're pushing messages out to the business and expecting them to consume it. We're not allowing them to feed back in. So how do we change that one-way communication? And lastly, the device chaos. People do tend to avoid communication if it's not on the medium that they prefer. You know, some people do prefer, I personally catch up on the news every day by using my phone and reading my local paper. Some people prefer to have a physical paper, or they like to check their news on their desktop. We all have our preferences. So how do we make sure that we give people that option in order to do it? So how do we improve it? We've talked about all the challenges and what we do. What are the how do we actually work towards updating and improving our ecosystem? So the first thing is them communication methods. Don't just rely on emails with links through to an internal site that can only be accessed when they're on-prem or via a VPN. Prioritize updating communication methods to make that collaboration, that document and file sharing so much easier rather than the back and forth emails. Social tools, you know, the liking, the commenting, the allowing people to get involved with communications is really key. A McKinsey study on the use of social tools and communication platforms showed that 80% of employees who have social tools at work communicate more regularly with the people on their team. So think about how do we, especially if they're remote, does a Zoom call, does a Teams call really give them that cultural experience that they would have got if they were maybe in the office grabbing a coffee, seeing how someone's weekend was? That's kind of getting lost when you jump onto a Zoom call, because it's about, we've got something to discuss, we've got work. Feedback, this has to be regular. Give your people a chance to share their knowledge. They're going to have different world experiences. New associates joining your organization are going to have a wealth of experience that they can feed back into your organization. So ask them regularly for feedback. Engaging that multi-generational, so looking at, does what we offer, can they access it on a web, on a tablet, on mobile? What are the preferences that our organization has, and how can we engage as many people as possible? Transparency, build on that, be open and honest with with your employees. A lack of transparency will impact morale. So communicate regularly. How are we doing against targets, against our strategy? There was another survey by Bamboo who said that employees stated that knowing the latest company news would enable them to do a better job and even have better relations with other staff. There could have been a massive success story. Someone's been promoted, someone's won a new customer, and actually you might bump into them in the corridor and not know that that's done, and that you missed that opportunity to actually say, do you know what, well done, great job. Focus on the cultural communications. So sometimes it's about, we haven't just got one office, there's multiple offices, there's global offices. So how do we think about what information is relevant to what people depending on where they are? Failing to localize communications and give the end user the ability to choose what information actually notifies them is kind of key. I work in the London office. If our New York office suddenly was closed due to a COVID scare, I don't need to be interrupted from the work that I'm doing now to be notified of that, because it's not going to affect me directly today. I may want that information and it will be accessible to me. But if it was news on the London office being closed, I would expect the news to reach me immediately, because that does affect me specifically. So how do we do that rather than just one size fits all for everyone? Different mediums. So when we're thinking about how we're pushing messages out there, it shouldn't just be text, and emails are generally a lot of text. How do we incorporate, a video message from the managing partner is so much more powerful than a handwritten message posted on an email or something like that. Why don't we include video, images, podcasts, all these types of different mediums to really help people engage? And of course, celebrate success. This isn't just about the big wins, the things that are priority missions. This is about the small stuff. This is the stuff that people really, want to be able to feel like they've added value in and been recognized for. So these are just a few of the ideas that we can do. Now, one firm that we worked with, and I'm going to come on to this a bit later on, but this was a real estate company called Knight Frank. They were really focused on how do they get in this one particular team, the CX one-to-one team, how do we really engage with these people? It was a set group. I mean, Knight Frank's a huge organization, but I think this app was designed for about 1,600 employees. And they wanted these employees to really feel part of something within that larger organization. So they focused on the engagement for these guys. They made it available on mobile and on a desktop. They really encouraged people to give recognition and awards, but not just from the top down. This was about peers giving recognition to peers. And actually, they found that that was more valuable sometimes because everyone knows your targets and what you're meant to do. But actually, to have your peers say, actually, you've done a really good job, or thanks for helping me with one part of it, it went down really well. It was also to collect ideas from the group, but not just submit an idea that no one else can see. It was almost public. It's, hey, I've got an idea about how we can improve this. Other people add to it. Suddenly the idea evolves and it becomes a much more living document. And again, a central place. So all the articles, reference materials, everyone knew exactly where it was and where that information could be found. But I'm going to show you a bit more on that a little bit later on. So please just at that segue, if you do have questions, please post them in the chat. We're going to come to them a bit later on. So let's look at some of the transformative workplace technologies. Now, the technology that companies are considering implementing, you can see this list here. So mobile is the top. Why? Because we live on our phones. It's the first thing that most people look at when they wake up and the last thing before they go to bed. So being able to use mobile as a medium to engage with our employees has been top of the list on this report. And that was a work by Future of Work report. And why? Well, because the trends show that we're picking up our phones on average 58 times a day. Now, I probably pick mine up 58 times before lunch, to be honest. I am properly addicted. My wife is always telling me to put my phone down, but it's, you know, it bleeps. I know that it's personal to me. I've asked my phone to alert me when I get certain information. Therefore, when my phone vibrates, when it buzzes, I know that it's something that I want to engage with. If it doesn't, if it's news that I'm, you know, I want to go and search for, I can find it. But actually, if it's alerting me, it's because I've set my preferences to say, alert me if that happens. So I'm addicted. 3 hours, 15 minutes every day, people are using their phones. However, when it comes to work, and especially within the legal industry that we're working in, phones are used even less. And it's a shame because we're missing out on a huge opportunity. So personalization is the key to this. We know our phones are personal. We set the preferences. We can decide when we're going to consume that information. It may be on the train home because mobile apps will work offline. So I'm on the tube, I can catch up on the internal news. I don't have to wait for a signal and then wait for a website to load. Connection time, I mentioned earlier on, instant gratification. There used to be a rule that if a website took longer than 5 seconds to load, people would leave. That new number is 2 seconds. So if you try and load up a website, it takes longer than 2 seconds, the majority of people would have left and gone somewhere else because it wasn't instant, which is shocking, but that's the world that we now live in. So it's not acceptable anymore to wait for a connection. So if you have an app, when you click on it, you expect to be able to open immediately and give you the information. But as well, you set your own preferences. How do you want to engage? What is the information? Some people will read forums, some people will listen to podcasts, some people will watch YouTube videos in order to learn. Again, you get that choice of how you do that. And why? They're much, much easier to use. No mobile phone has really ever come with a manual, how to do it, how to use it. They're designed to be very intuitive and very simple to use. They're convenient because they're pretty much always in your pocket, in your hand, in your handbag. They load fast, they work offline, super safe. Everyone has, you know, face recognition, fingerprints, all of that included, which makes them super reliable. So that is why people are moving towards that way to engage. But it's not just about having an app. You've got to have the right content in order for it to be engaging. So ensure that you enable your staff to be able to choose. And in the picture on the right hand side, you'll see here, there's department posts, there's team posts, and then we've just in this example used, the energy sector, the financial services. They're turned off. Whoever this user is has said, no, I want to be alerted. I want my phone to ping, vibrate, whatever it is, when news comes in that's relevant to my department. If it's regarding my team, I don't want an alarm. I don't want to be notified, but I do want maybe a notification to pop up on the screen, but not an audio sound. Whereas if it's any news that pops into the news feed regarding the energy sector, I'll just look at that in my own time on demand, not because I want to be alerted. As well, it's, again, using that multiple different ways to consume. So make sure that it's not just all text. Use videos, allow people to read the transcript or listen to the podcast. It really is about giving them tools available to everyone. And lastly, it's the interaction bit. What does it mean to me? So let's say that there was a notification that said, due to remote working, the new policy within our organization is X. Now, a lot of people may think, okay, does that include me? What does that actually mean to me? Is that going to change anything? So you can allow people to actually use maybe a benchmarking tool. They can answer a few questions to see whether whatever that new piece of news is does affect them, and give them that opportunity to do so. Now, the benefits of applications really to your firm is a few things. One, obvious, the engagement, allowing people to really understand what is happening within your firm, getting the information when they want to receive it, where they are. The feedback, again, give them the time. When they're at work, when they're at their desk, they're working, they're busy. Everyone's super busy nowadays. So when's the best time to ask someone to give feedback? Maybe once they're traveling, once they've got downtime. I call it downtime. It's not really downtime. It's just non-productive time when they're maybe traveling to and from work. Well, that's a great time to encourage someone to say, hey, why not fill in a survey, give us some feedback. The analytics to understand what parts of this communication is actually being well received. What are people looking into? What are they engaging with? And what aren't they? How can we improve that? The other thing is it's always up to date. There's no risk of information being out of date. If you send a PDF attachment to an email and someone reads that email 3 weeks later, the information in that PDF could be out of date. Whereas if it was on a mobile site or a website, it's constantly being updated, and that's where they're going to receive that information. And lastly, and this is growing now, it's about the brand awareness, being seen as an employer brand, especially for people coming in. They want to feel part of something. Often new recruits are given a swag bag with, pens and cups and mugs and pads and jumpers. I've got my Fliplet t-shirt on here. So being an employer brand is really important and to be seen. And just as a bit of a segue on employer branding, I've just got a couple of examples for you just to bear in mind if this is a route that you're going to go down. Here's an example of inconsistent branding from 2 of the big 4. So when you look, none of the apps look like they're from the same organization. They've just been produced probably by different agencies, different teams on different platforms, may not give the best impression. If you look at the other 2 firms out of the big 4, they seem to have got it right. So they're probably using some kind of platform that enables them to have a templated solution to keep everything uniform and on brand. But that was just a side note for your thinking and maybe for your brand teams. So before we crack on, I asked you to have your phones at the ready. Please, if you do, if you now point your camera or your scan tool at the screen. Hopefully, my colleague has also posted a link in chat. Have you done that, Sophie? If you haven't, if you could, so for those of you that don't have their phones to hand, I don't believe that none of you do, but if any of you don't, you can click on the link that Sophie will put into the chat channel in just a moment. We're very conscious of ensuring that any communication we share with you guys, you've asked for. As I've mentioned before, it's about that personalization. Are you getting spams information, or are you actually getting valuable information that you've asked for? So please do get out and scan. You will receive some information and a summary of the results after this webinar. So please do get involved if you can. But without further ado, let's have a look at some case studies. So as I mentioned, we've got 4 of them, 4 completely different solutions, but each one of them is designed to improve communication or collaboration within that certain organization. So we're going to start first of all with our ROMS app, the remote and office management solution. And the firm we're going to use for this, we have a number of case studies on this solution, but McFarlane's, a UK law firm, they, as most firms were, they had to adapt quickly, and they wanted to start to bring their teams back into the office, but they couldn't all just come back in at the same time. So the challenge was, how do we support them? How do we ensure that they feel comfortable to come back into the office? How do we allow them to understand what the firm has done to ensure their safety and that they are going to be in a safe environment? They can book certain spaces in order to ensure that they are socially distancing and all of that kind of thing. So this is what they did, and there's a great quote coming up from Andrew Power, if any of you know him. But let's look at what our solution is. So this is a template that we have, and what McFarlane's did was took that template and they configured it and customized it to suit their specific needs. But some of the key parts of this is the health status. A lot of people were doing questionnaires before people could come back in the office to ensure that they weren't feeling the effects of COVID. That's been relaxed, but now people are evolving it into just generally seeing how people are doing or if they've been vaccinated. But again, that's very individual to every firm. The office capacity and knowing where staff are working from, who's in the office this week, who's working from home, how do we quickly get that information? Different rules for different offices. Lots of firms are, in New York, it's all locked down again, whereas over in Florida, pretty much it's open business as usual. So how do we have one tool that is able to cater for lots of different places? Auditing and reporting is essential, especially with things like COVID. If someone has visited the office and then the following day they are showing COVID signs, well, how do we get back into the reporting to see who was in the office yesterday that could have come into contact with that person? It's really key to be able to ensure that you can look at that information, ensure you haven't gone over capacity and communicate that with the people that need to know. And then you've got simply managing booking spaces, ordering food. We didn't want everyone to rush to the canteen when we're meant to be social distancing. So we included features like food ordering. Here's a couple of screenshots of McFarlane's app. You'll see there's just a simple form to be able to book the office that you want to go into. You've got a floor plan that shows the different desks that are available and different color schemes so that you can click on to see who's already booked, who's sat there, what's available, what's not. Information, you'll see Andrew's picture here, and you can see down here that Andrew was working from home on Monday. He was going to the office on Tuesday, working from home on Wednesday, and then back in the office Thursday, Friday. So if I wanted to arrange some time, at a glance, I can see exactly where he's going to be for the coming week. And that's simply done by updating the status. So you just will click where your status was. So that's just one from McFarlane's. And a lot of the work was done by Andrew himself. And this quote, I think, is fantastic. The fact that it's been over 10 years since he was been in a technical role. But he built this himself. He was able to use our technology to build out something. He didn't rely on developers. He didn't rely on an internal comms team. He did it himself in the evenings. And I know he did because I heard some of the fun stories from my account management team that worked with him to try and figure out exactly how to get this to work. But any of you that know Andrew, feel free to reach out and ask him. So let's look at another solution. So a directory. Now, most firms would already have some kind of directory on their intranet, basic contact information, normally pulling information from a website, something like that. But a US firm, Benesh, they wanted to have that native solution on their phones with additional information, not just contact information. So again, we have a standardized directory for this. It includes things like all of the contact information you would expect to have, but it would also include organization charts. So who reports into who and when, who's the legal secretary, who's the PA, what offices are open, travel information regarding the offices. So if someone's visiting the London office for the first time, are there good restaurants or hotels around? I don't want to rely on TripAdvisor. I want to know from the people that really live there what information can be used. The meeting rooms, the facilities that were available in each of the offices. So it was much more than a people directory. It was about the organisation. What events were happening? What social events? What training opportunities were there? Can you contact people very easily and quickly via phone or third party, or integrating with things like Teams or Jabber? But also creating custom lists. So if you could have social engagement, you might have a football team that you play with at work. So you want to set up separate lists, just like you would do on WhatsApp. You set up different channels with different groups of people in, and you can do that all within that directory. So let's look at a couple of screenshots from Banesh. So again, they had it, and you can see these things here are search and filter. I can bookmark, so I can label people who I want to find regularly. I've got a powerful search as well. It can go in, you get a nice full bleed image of the person, but then you've got quick, a floor plan to where their desk or office is, and contact numbers, their own floor plans, but also information. So in their case, courts where attorneys are admitted. Again, that information previously may have been in a completely different place, but then have made it accessible. So on demand, they can pull that information. 70% of staff at the time of us doing this case study had engaged with the app. Now that's quite a huge number. And a lot of the work that they did could be repurposed and used in other areas as well. Now, their chief financial officer even said that it's a really important productivity tool. So being able to communicate with everyone, having it in the palm of your hand, especially with this home working environment, is quite key. So hopefully you guys, if you don't have a directory that's native on the phone, it might be something you want to look into. Knight Frank, I mentioned these guys before, so they wanted that one source of information. And again, let's just look at some of the key features. So it needs to be the same experience on mobile as you would expect to get on a desktop, enabling people to stay connected with the information wherever they are. Praising employees for key success, allow individuals to voice their opinions and give feedback on the organization. And it's about that focus on quality over quantity, allowing users to set the interests that are most relevant to them so that they get notified in a way that they want to, not just constantly being interrupted. Measuring that success, surveying your employees, avoiding the silos where information isn't shared or available to everyone, and boosting that social element as well. So they built this, and I know I've shown one screenshot already, but they was encouraging people right at the top, share an idea. Have you got an idea that can improve this business or this particular project or this team? And then the scoop, this is the latest news. Reward, how do we recognize and who's getting awards? And they really push this to encourage people to do it. And you can see just a few kind of screenshots there, enabling people to understand the vision and the updates to the project that they were running, this CX one-to-one team. And what they did really well, and Steve Jobs once said, people don't know what they want until they see it. Now, they were able to build this solution, actually show it to their leadership group to really get their buy-in, and it was their buy-in that actually proved the success of this. So being able to produce something, getting it into the hands of the key people to show them what is the art of the possible, and that really comes down to the benefits of how mobile can work for you guys. Reference tools. So this was a firm, Mills and Weaver, another UK firm, and they actually have already won a number of awards for this app, and they're up for another one at the British Legal Technology Forum, and fingers crossed for them and all the other finalists. They just generally didn't have enough bandwidth within their innovation team to answer the individual questions that were coming from lawyers regarding technology. There was quite low awareness amongst the partners of the technology solutions that was available in the firm to help them and help their clients. So getting these time-limited partners to engage with traditional training methods, such as technology briefings, was quite difficult. So the information about tech tools and solutions available was not easily and readily accessible for use in pitches or client meetings. So the information that was conveyed through lengthy FAQ documents and traditional technology briefings just wasn't working. So they decided to build an app called What the Tech? And it really just put all of them answers in the palm of the hand of the lawyers. And actually their success was amazing. They had great feedback. It was really simple to use. So even the most kind of technology, what's the word? I'm not going to say dinosaurs, but the people that really shied away from technology were able to use it. And it was pushed out via MDM directly onto the mobile phone. So there was no installing, downloading, whatever. They signed in using single sign-on, really quick and easy. But now they had all of the information in the palm of their hand around the technology that the firm had. And obviously during COVID, that technology has just accelerated. So hard for lawyers to keep up. Just a quick couple of screenshots as well from their application. And again, from Emma Jackson. So they needed that solution so that everyone understood what was available. So another way to communicate that was looking for something different to what they had done previously. I've got one more for you, but this one isn't a case study because we haven't currently had any firms who have done any press regarding their solutions, but it's really probably one of the most popular ones that we're working with our clients with right now. And it's about onboarding. We've already said how the Generation X and the millennials live on their phone. So how do we onboard people when they first agree to come and work with us? How do we enable them to feel part of the culture and understand the firm and its leadership and its strategy before they even start? So having a mobile app that they can get access to once they've completed maybe their summer associate program, or even during their summer associate program. Being able to see the news, get introductions to key areas of the firm, who's their mentor going to be, what's happening in different departments, personalized agendas, allowing them to meet the other people that they're going to be joining the firm with, regular surveys, forums, submit ideas, all of their training schedule, micro learning opportunities, all of this included just simply within one application that's available on their phone. So a couple of success metrics. If you are going to look to do and change your ecosystem with regards to communication, you want to have some success metrics in place to report back to the business on what you are planning to do. So first of all, what are you trying to solve? What is it that maybe isn't currently working? Are people just simply not reading the emails that are being sent out? Are they not engaging with it? Are the numbers of people maybe signing up for training opportunities lower than you would have expected? What is the benefit to the end user of maybe using an app as a solution? How is it better than an email? Is it going to save that user time? Is it going to give them the answers that they need quicker and they can engage with it on their time as opposed to only when they're at their desktop computer? What value would the firm receive? Is it going to save us money rather than having to print out regularly lots of information to hand to people? Will it save us money on that? Will it save us money on time and effort to even get it designed because we've got a new PDF with new terms and conditions, for example, or can we just do it on a digital format? Who's the audience? Is this designed for everyone in the firm, or is it just for the lawyers? Is it just for particular senior management? Is it a reporting tool? Think about who that intended audience is and the levels of engagement that you would expect them to have. And therefore, do they even want it? As I mentioned before, a lot of people don't know what they want until they see it. So can your solution, can you get something, a prototype out quickly to show them what it can be, and then it can be updated and iterated on in order to make it the best it can possibly be. And then what's the expectation? Are you expecting, if you only give it to all of the lawyers, do you expect 100% of lawyers to engage with it? Or maybe 50%? Or within 3 months, you'd expect 64%? I don't know. But you should be thinking about that success and how we're going to measure how much engagement we're getting from whatever solution you implement. So we're nearing the end. We're coming up to the 45-minute mark. Let me give you a very quick overview of who Fliplet are. So Fliplet is a prefab or no-code, low-code platform that enables anyone to create these solutions. The reason internal comms teams and IT teams alike love working with Fliplet is because the internal comms team can own this project. IT will be involved from a security point of view, ensuring that integration, single sign-on, MDM deployment, all of that is taken care of, but it's actually the internal comms team who have full control over the look, the feel, the messaging, the maintenance of the application. And of course, Fliplet take care of everything else in terms of security and ensuring that it works on the brand new iPhone 13 that's just come out. It's our job to make sure everything works perfectly, so you're not having to rely on an IT team to do it. Our platform encourages unlimited apps. You can build an app for different offices, different teams. You don't have to rely on this one solution to cater for everyone. You can build individual solutions that cater for particular teams, personas, whatever it may well be. And of course, truly customizable. But if you want to build on top of what it is that we have, because we understand we don't know the nuances of every single business, so we give you them initial building blocks. But if you want to add additional code, you want to add additional functionality, you can do. Of course, it's secure. We have all the integration capabilities, and of course, it works everywhere. That's all I'm going to say on that. And now's the time. Please get your phones out. Let's see you scanning this QR code and giving us your feedback. The link is in there from Sophie, so you can please also click on that link to take. There's only a couple of questions. It will take you about 1 minute. Click a few buttons and give us some feedback. That would be great. So whilst you're doing that, I'm going to ask Sophie, during the last 43 minutes, have there been any questions coming?
Yes, Mike, hello, thank you for that. First of all, I want to address the question from Kenneth, which was posted publicly. And just to read it out, he's asking, with these case studies, we can see which feature sets being used, many in combination. So how are these feature sets introduced to their business team? What was the staging used to gain acceptance? As he can imagine that it all turned out at once and dropped in. So adopted feature by feature or team by team, just how is that technology being adopted across the firm?
Okay, that's a great question, Kenneth. Yeah, my advice is keep it simple. You can't just send, introduce a new, let's say it's a new application where all of this news is going to be. You can't just tell people once and expect them to go, oh, yeah, of course, I'm going to scan that QR code and I've now got the app on my phone. I'm going to get used to it. It needs to be habit forming, but also people often need to be reminded to get to engage with something that's new. Now, if you was to launch something that is packed full with tons of features, as you mentioned, it can be overwhelming and people will be like, oh, hang on, I'm too busy for this. I'll do it later. And then they never do. Always start with the first iteration. Start with something that it's a directory. It just has the names of the people that you work with and their phone numbers and whatever. And then you may add additional information. It gives you a chance to re-engage. It gives you a chance to do some new promotion around it. It's like, hey, check out our app. We've just launched a new office feature, office listing to get all the information regarding the offices and local news, whatever else. Maybe a couple of weeks later, hey, we've added another new feature. Every time it encourages people to say, oh, I didn't engage with that the first time. And now it's got this new, oh, I'll go and check it out. It encourages people to come back. Maybe the first time they looked at it, they thought, oh yeah, that's handy, and then forgot about it because they was doing something else. So absolutely, it takes time. And that's why you have to have your success metrics around what is it that we're going to do. Don't try and put everything into one application. Keep it simple. Have the core functionality there and then add to it slowly and get feedback, because actually you might get feedback from people using it saying, oh, could you include this information? And you think, that's better than what we was going to do. Let's go add that and then announce it that based on feedback from the users, we've now improved this or added that. So yes, it's about adding feature by feature where that's necessary. Don't do it all at once, but also always use a pilot, always use a team. If you've got a big organization, start maybe with one office, get that feedback and adopt and improve it and then roll it out slowly. It can be a huge challenge to roll it out all in one go. So hopefully that answers some of your question, Kenny.
Thank you, Mike. That actually leads me to the next question, which is actually, in your experience, what is the biggest challenge a new client might expect when looking to start building an app?
the biggest challenge? It's normally getting the content. A lot of these, a lot of firms have lots of information, but it's all over the place. They don't necessarily have a centralized place where they can get the information, or the information is in a format that doesn't really work on mobile. So for example, it's in a spreadsheet at the moment. Have you ever tried to view a spreadsheet on your phone? It just doesn't work very well. So it's the effort to have to kind of go, well, that content is valuable, but now how do we put it into a way that is much more mobile friendly? You know, again, trying to view a PDF on a phone isn't great. So can we take that information and put it onto a screen? So it's a standalone screen rather than on a PDF. So if you're a firm that already has lots of content, your information is stored in a way that can easily be accessed through, you know, an integration to pull that information through, you'll have a much easier time than if your information and you have to rely on people to generate content. If it's much more engaging two-way, allowing the users to basically make their own content, you're going to have a much more successful application.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one final question, which is how do you promote the app internally? Launching an app is great, but do you have any advice on how you would promote it internally so you can maximize the return on investment?
We do. We actually have a full kind of plan that we use with our client base. So it's the way you communicate, and we look to the likes of Apple and Google and how they promote their application. So it isn't just an email to say, hey, you know, we've got this new app. It's about using images. We use a lot of what we do to encourage people to continuously engage with an application is to include gamification. So rewarding people for using different features within an application. I know some people may feel it a bit silly, but it really does work if you can be encouraged and getting that little star or that tick in a box to say that you've done something. Actually, people will do it. They just will. So even if you think your lawyers are not going to engage with this, you may have seen it at various events that you've been to in the past. You open up the app and it encourages you to, you know, post something, visit this screen, go here, download that. And each time you're going to get a little confetti or a little star that shows up to say you're level 3. People just naturally are competitive and going to want to do it. So we have that built into a lot of our applications so that you can customize it and encourage people to continuously come back and engage, to understand the value that that app's doing. The reason you're rewarding them is because it's a valuable part of the application for that type of user. So as well as, you know, the communication tools, or as well as regular updates highlighting the value of the application to the end user, there's things that you can do in the app, but also outside of the app, and we help our clients with all of that.
Thank you, Mike. I think this was all of the questions that I had. If anyone wants to post anything, please feel free to either post it in the chat now, or you can email us later, and we'll be happy to support you.
Brilliant. So lastly, just a couple of bits. We have some more webinars coming up. So we've got lawyer productivity. This one was mainly about, you know, that communication channel. So we're going to go more into tools that help lawyers be more productive and strengthen their relationships. And then we're going to be looking at more in-depth into this onboarding that I mentioned as one of the use cases that I showed you. Hopefully by then we'll have a case study that we can share as well. But training apps, e-learning, onboarding are really big from our client base. So we're going to be running a webinar on that. So one of the questions, if you'd scan the QR code, was specifically on, are you interested in these? Please do let us know. Bang on time, 9 minutes to go before the hour. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you've got some value out of this, and I look forward to reading all of your feedback. Until the next time, thanks ever so much.
Thank you.